All right, so we're going to have a look at developed designs. So we've got our initial designs, and you've seen that I've rendered one of these somewhere using the markers. I've gone over it more recently and coloured it in a bit more. Well, there it is on the bottom. So here we go. This is the one that I showed you how to do. I've inked in now the numbers. I think the buttons as well, so it looks a little bit nicer. That's fine, that's really good. Maybe we could do with a little bit more darkness around the front, I don't know. So what do we do next? We're going to take one of these initial designs and we're going to develop it. And really, you need 2 pages of developed designs if you're hoping for, 95%. If you're hoping for 100%, you really need three pages of developed designs. And then you need one final design. And that one final design needs to be completed by the end of next week. And so this week we need to get our initials done and we need to get one developed design done. All right, so let's have a look at this as a page that I created in class. Some of you probably haven't seen this before, and I'm quite liking this design, although I think that those 7 segs at the top there are not particularly nice, and so I think I'm going to extend that up and make it more triangular and put the 7 segs on the front. So what we want is a nice big isometric drawing, and so starting off with that vertical, I'm actually going to go taller because it's quite a tall product actually, isn't it? And then sort of over here, isn't it? And then that's sort of over there. Something like that I think that's going out slightly too far. That's probably better. Bringing that in. Like that. Okay. Now I've done the rough shape, I can start looking at the actual design of the product. And what do we have? Well, we have an angle. Let's just have a quick look again. We've got an angle going back. I was suggesting that this should come all the way up. Probably have a rounded top to it. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to choose a point. I'm going to project that across and then going to mark those 2 points, and I'm going to join them up with my corners. Not that straight, I'm afraid. That's better. And as I get to the top here, what I want is I want this curved, I want the front curved and that curved as well. And so the whole of this thing is a lot more circular around all the edges. And you can sort of see it working out. I want to rub that out a little bit because I think it's going to be curving in both directions. But what I do want is a flat top to it there. On the front, I'm going to put a couple of 7 segs. On the bottom here, I'm going to put holes for a buzzer, and then I'm going to have a little sort of control panel going across here, just making sure my geometry is correct. And that's where the buttons, I'm actually going to put 3 buttons and try and get them evenly spaced, and so I'll put 1 in there, 1 in there, and 1 in there. It's probably not that bad. I've got my 7 segs, as I said before. 7 segs are going to go in there. Okay. So you can see the sort of rough picture that we've created, the rough design that we've created. So what do I do next? Well, it's all well and good coming up with a design, but how does this actually work? How are you going to actually make it? To be honest with you, that's going to be very hard to do. Mold that in all directions, and so I think I might just change that design slightly And so we get a sharper point down the bottom there, and we also get a sharper point at the top here, a bit more like that. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw a side elevation to really explain what I'm talking about. And so from the side here, I'm going to have a piece of wood as the side of this product, which comes back like that, and that's going to be the side of the product. And on top of that is going to sit a piece of acrylic, and that acrylic is going to be connected via a screw at the top there, but also via a screw at the bottom here, so it keeps it nicely in place. And because of that, because I'm connecting it with screws, I'm going to put the head of my screws on the product. I'm also going to put the head of my screws on the product down here. Remember, now I'm going much more to the end. I've got rid of those curved corners, and so in there would be my screws, and also up there. Alright, I'm pretty happy with that. So what does this look like then as a carcass? Well, I can draw the carcass. By projecting out. My lines aren't very straight this afternoon, and that isn't very good either because it's going, that's better. And as I said, this side would be that side, and so what I'm going to do is I'm going to have something like that. And so remember, that's got to have a thickness to it, hasn't it? So I'm going to draw in the thickness here, and then I would have a piece of wood which would be right at the back, and then I would have, just looking at my so now what I've got is I've got a back, and what I don't have, which I should have put in, is a bottom. Oh, that's not right. It needs to be like that. So that is going to be the wooden construction, and of course that's going to be a wooden construction. I should start thinking about what it's made of, so I could write carcass is made from plywood, for example, and I could even draw out the different components. And what I might want to do as well up here is put a dimension to it, and so the height is going to be 200, the width here is going to be, I don't know, 14, and then we've got a, sorry, that's a width actually, yeah, 14, height, and we've got a depth here, and that can be 100. Doesn't really matter, doesn't really matter how accurate, but you've got to be taking that into consideration. Okay, so we've got a side elevation, let's just put that in. And we've also got carcass of product. I'm just going to stop there and pick you up in a bit. All right, we're going to keep on going with this. Something you might want to show, for example, is the shape of the screw, and so you might want to do a little picture just to show that the screw you're using has a pan head, which is a rounded one, and so then you could just do some diagonals for a thread, and so that looks the part. I've decided, along with these push to make buttons, I think what I'm going to do, those push to makes are a little bit big. I've also noticed that you can't see much of my drawing, so I'm going to start drawing a bit heavy, or a bit heavier, just directly above each one of these. I'm going to draw in a PTM. Now, PTM and LED. LEDs are in a holder, and so there'll be a LED with a ring around the outside. Like that. Okay, now what I need to discuss is how all of this is going to be connected. And so first of all, for example, we have our 7 segs. So let's have a little think about them. Well, they're not the easiest thing to connect. They are usually on some sort of board, aren't they? So what I'm going to do over here, I'm going to write down outputs. Well, I should actually write develop design on here, shouldn't I? I'm going to say 1 because I'm going to do 3 of these outputs. And so I'm going to first of all do my 7 seg. Now my 7 seg is like a box, isn't it? Like this. And that box is going to be mounted within that piece of acrylic, which I'm going to draw to the side. This is a side elevation. So that will be my piece of acrylic, which is this front panel here. And my 7 segment, which has its pins here, and its pins here in a row, is going to be soldered to a piece of board, which I'm going to put in. So it's all getting a bit confusing now, so I'm going to start to acrylic, 7 seg, pins, and then that is PCB. So what I'm going to need to do is to make sure that all this can get stuck together. I'm going to have to put some spacers and glue. So in here, I'm going to have a spacer. And I'm going to put a spacer in here as well. I'll do the same hatching. I'm going to need to glue with epoxy, which is a thermosetting plastic, as I'm sure you all know. So that's my 7 segment. My pins of the 7 seg there. Okay, now I can start thinking about, all right, what about these push to make switches? Well, these push to make switches are also going to be located on the acrylic. So what do they look like? Well, they have like a, as I remember them, like a little sort of bung at the end and a barrel that goes up, which has a thread on them like that. Then a button comes out the top. Yeah. No. The button comes out the top here. And I believe here there is a nut which connects everything in place. And then of course what we've got is our shrink on here, and then a cable coming off. So that's going to be my push to make, and that's how it's going to be located. Okay, so I've got that push to make in there on that piece of acrylic. which I just hatch in there. And so the other thing that I need to put in, of course, I can label this shrink, and that is a PTM. Other thing I need to do is my LEDs. My LEDs are going to go through a piece of acrylic, just as before, my LEDs. Now LEDs come in a holder, pre-made holder, and so they go through like this, and then the other side is exactly the same. And the LED itself is located in the holder. I think actually the bottom sticks out here, I think. It doesn't really matter, to be honest with you. But what I do know is there'll be a little hole for this holder to go through. And then I have two legs sticking out the bottom, which I put shrink on. And, again, we've got the cabling twisted. Okay, and so that would be our LED. That's the holder. LED itself is here. And again, you've got the shrink. I put outputs up here. We've got some inputs, haven't we? I better put that in. I've got two inputs there. In addition, what we've got here is a big, this is a huge sounding microphone thing for a buzzer. But the buzzer, very much on the piece of acrylic, if I put buzzer in up here, try to cram everything in. That's a piece of acrylic. Buzzers are just relatively simple. You just have a couple of pins coming out the bottom, and what we can do is have the holes cut into the acrylic like we've got, and we can epoxy that into position. And just say I'm sort of discussing my different ideas. Okay, in regards to the carcass that we went through before, which is going to be made out of timber, we can write that in. Constructed from timber. What sort of timber? Well, I reckon it's going to probably be MDF, to be honest with you. So I'll put that in as well. How's it going to be made? Well, the thing we could have done is we could have just shown that we could just push that. It's not very good, is it? Carcass of product. Thank you. Glue panels together. Okay. So they get an idea of how the whole thing goes together. What else do I need to do? Well, I haven't really discussed this piece of acrylic, have I? And so what we can do up here is we can suggest that the acrylic sheet can be line bent and then what we could do there is we could make a former or a jig and now I'm just going to hatch that in. acrylic, line bent over jig. I'm going to write jig in there and show that that is the part. Just starting to draw a little darker just so you can definitely see what I'm doing. You can see I'm moving the piece of paper quite a lot so I can get the decent angles. Okay, so we have an idea if that's how we're going to do that. We could come up with down here a little bit of CAD. What's that CAD going to look like? Well, we know that it's going to have a bend in it. We know that it's going to need a couple of 7 segment holes cut out. We also know that it needs, that's not so good, I think I've come too far across on that one. It needs some holes for some LEDs and some holes for some PTMs. We're going to come up with holes for the speaker, and to hold it all in position we need some holes in the corners. I might add to that later. I made a little list which I'm just going to go through. Construction, I've sort of talked about construction, placement of power. I haven't talked about that, have I? And I haven't talked about the placement of the circuit board. And so in here, what we could do, because there's going to be a backboard down there as well, whereabouts is that circuit board going to go? I would have thought that circuit board goes on some circuit board pillars, which are little plastic pillars, and then the circuit board itself could sit on those pillars like that. Now, of course, on here there's going to be some 7 segments going all the way through. There's going to be some LEDs. There's going to be some PTMs, and down here there's going to be a buzzer, isn't there? So you can see that drawing now really has come to life a little bit more. But that doesn't really talk about the battery, so maybe the battery is going to go in here, one would hope. And to be honest with you, if it doesn't all fit at this moment, it doesn't matter. This isn't the final design. I'm going to put battery here. So I get a good idea of what's going on. Right, in addition, what else do we need to do? We need to show how we can get to the battery. Well, what we can do is or actually, I'm just thinking what we've sort of shown it here. I wonder if down here we should draw that front panel. Which has been removed, that acrylic panel, and we can write in acrylic panel can be removed to access battery. So I'm really starting to fill this page up, and I could even on here, just draw in a battery pack. So I've got a good idea. Give that a little bit of shading. Battery in there. Mounting of inputs, dimensions. We've come up with some dimensions. Explode diagram. I think that's pretty good, to be honest with you. Of course, it would be better. There we go. If I was just a bit more accurate, if you could see this a bit easier, because I know I've had a look on the film and it's not that easy to see. Okay, so this is, and then what we could write down here is we could write a conclusion. Okay, and we could just write, quite like this design, however, I'm not so fussed about this, that, or the other. I think what I'm going to do is do X, Y, or Z. What we haven't really done, and we might want to do, is just put in some blocks, and so we've got some good mounting points for those screws. So look, I hope that makes sense on what you need to do. Just going to check again: construction, placement of battery, access to battery. We've talked about mounting of inputs, explode diagram, mounting of outputs, dimensions. So I think that's pretty good. $61. There we go. Yeah, writing your conclusion, what you're going to do next, what worked, what didn't work, and then go on to produce another one looking at a different design. So you need to do 2 of these, and if you want to get the best marks, you can do 3. And then we're going to be on to final designs at the end of next week. So for your prep, to be clear, you need to do 1 of these, and you need to do a page of initial ideas. All right, hope that is of some use, and I look forward to seeing your work.